Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome back to Geometry Dash. Now, today I'm going to be answering an extremely frequently asked question. I'm kinda known as this really snobby critic since I'm frequently uploading all of these request videos. A lot of people ask me if I make any levels of my own, which is very clear to see on the screen that I do. I'm going to be going through some of my levels that I've made with some insight on how I made them and some explanation behind them. I'm not going to be starting off right at the bottom. I'm going to skip past the first couple of levels and I'm going to go to desultory because I think this is where my style really began to shine. In the beginning when I was creating, I didn't have a set style, I was just building what came to mind, but with desultory, which I still think is my best level, I kind of broke out of that box and sort of defined what my style was going to be with lots of effects, wacky colours, sort of desaturated slightly, not too bright, flashy, just kind of vibey with a lot of Zulu 75, now known as Xorberax's music. I find his music very easy to build to because his music often has a certain vibe to it, which I'm often very good at recreating within the game. As you can see, this is sort of a vintage sort of look due to the color filter, the desaturated colors, the black fades at the side, which aren't very efficiently made, but I still think they're quite effective. Just desultory is a very special level to me because I sort of broke out of this box that I was stuck in when I wasn't being very creative when I was building. I made this level in about 2 days when I was on holiday, and this kind of opened a can of worms once it got rated in the first 24 hours. In the same week I went on to upload Half-Hearted, which I also... What? No. As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the Newgrounds moderation team, this level sort of started a massive spree on my level page of just levels that I half-hearted, as the title suggests. Every level that came after these two specific levels, desultory and half-hearted, was more focused on bringing in a theme, a vibe, a certain aesthetic that didn't really have too much effort put into it or much energy behind it, but it was often very original, which is what made me stick out. I was very committed to making a certain vibe with a certain feeling that you wouldn't get anywhere else, and I feel like that's what made me sort of take off slightly with a lot of features back to back in very little time. However, making sort of anticlimactic levels didn't really get me very far since a lot of my levels are all 20k downloads. You see, it's a very common trend with all of these. I'm going to skip over Blather Skite and go into Trippy Trip right here. But the thing that kept me going was the fun I was having making certain aesthetics, certain vibes. All of my levels are different. I have a lot of levels with an assortment of dark tones, but I also have a lot of levels with sort of white colorized vibes to them. Now, I know what you're thinking, Wulzy, this goes against everything you've ever said in your critiques when you're reviewing level requests. I just want to make it clear that I never made any of these levels for attention. I just did it because I felt like it was right. It felt right to build instead of forcing out a specific style. When I'm looking for specific levels to rate, I often look for something unique, and if that's not there, I often go into my big mode where I check for empty spaces, blah blah blah. Now I feel like my levels are kind of unique. I'm not trying to praise myself too much, but I try to make my levels different from everyone else's. And when I was thinking about it today, I feel like these 5 levels, Versuit, Trippy Trip, Blather Skite, Half-Hearted and Desultory, best represent my creating stigma. Because of how quickly all of these levels were pumped out, I had a lot of motivation, they were all back to back, right, although that wasn't what I was building for. It still gave me a bit more motivation to keep building, which is how I've amassed 32 CP without many people knowing that I've actually made a level. Because a lot of these levels are quite chill, I'm not building them to be super climactic like, oh, Extreme Demon, wow, amazing new popular hype level. They're just levels that I sort of made to represent certain feelings, vibes, themes, as I said earlier, anything that really came to mind, which is kind of what I was doing in the beginning couple of levels, but not to this extent. I wasn't being creative in their aesthetic. A lot of my earlier levels were influenced by specific levels that I'd seen before. They weren't very original, which is why they weren't very successful either. Hue 180 was the level that kind of drew people's attention the most because of how saturated all my colours were all of a sudden. I'd broken out of the box yet again from desaturated, colorized stuff to more rainbow-inspired aesthetics. Now this level is quite insane, using the white blending screen to mesh all the colours together. It's super bright, it's also super bad, it's aged terribly, but at the time this was the level that drew the most attention to my name because people like Nexus, what have you, have uploaded this level, you know, with its very extravagant and recognizable colour and clear filter that's above the level. I don't know, it's original, but it also looks very terrible looking back at it. This was also one of the first times I had made a level with such an energetic song, vibe, you know, all of these pulsing objects. I'd never really done this before. And as I said, those kind of levels do better, than the chill ones, apart from these two levels right here. These two levels have brought me so many eyes. I feel like these two levels did the most work in sort of breaking my standards and bringing me out of the box that I was stuck in with the sort of monotonous, repetitive chill levels. Now, while these levels are both chill, I think that these are the most experimental works that I've ever made, and these really helped to put me on the map when I was coming up as a creator, because I put less effort into the gameplay and more into the aesthetics and the effects that are there. And these two effects caught a lot of people's attention. This level in particular, not serious, this level is the one that I just completely went against all of the norms in sort of GD effect levels by doing my best to have this one immersive effect at the beginning and then have super easy endings so that anyone can access this specific effect right here, because I was super proud of it, how all the arrows were moving, how sort of hypnotizing it is, the black overlay, which improves the immersion, improves the atmosphere. You see, the song is very vibey, it's got very specific instruments, it's got a sort of droning sound in the background that kind of draws you in to look at this, and I feel like this is what makes this level so original, so eye-catching, so outstanding in its sort of structure, because it's so out of the ordinary in both its like gameplay and its format. So Not Serious was my sort of level to break the norm. This one is kind of in a similar fashion with a 15-second effect at the beginning, but it got recognized for the wrong reason, because this 300 group effect lags the game out of its mind. This effect isn't even optimized properly. If I pause right here, you can see a big thick line where there's a bunch of lines overlapped at once, which is super unoptimized, and there's also certain lines that are a lot thicker than others. So what brought this level to people's attention is the lag that this part causes when a lot of the lines overlap in their rotation. As you can see, my song is offset by about 4 blocks right here, and it made it onto a lot of channels like Nexus, Partition, Eric Van Wilderman, particularly for being laggy, and also the original format yet again. Yet again, this is one of my levels that just completely goes against everything I've ever said in a form request video or a DM request video, because there's lots of open space, it's static, it's patchy, there's lots of open space, the transitions are weak. But as I said earlier, I kind of value originality in my levels specifically. And when I'm playing a level and there's no originality there, I go in and look for all of these things that could redeem it. See, everything's really static, the pulses are super weird, they kind of break the white mask that's going on, the colorizing that I've got going on. This is super empty and the effect is really rushed and lazy to just fill up the rest of the level. I mean, I guess the ending's kind of cool and it syncs pretty nicely, but the level is super rushed. As the description says, it's made in 2 hours, alongside a lot of the other levels on this list. Not Serious, 1 hour, Hue 180, a couple of days, Versuit a day, Trippy Trip, 3 hours, Blade the Sky, 45 minutes. See, I was making levels very quickly, just focusing on specific concepts instead of their actual quality and decoration and how they fill up the screen. Alright, so I said that Desultory is probably my best level, but my favourite level that I've made is Yob, and it's also one of my most successful levels. I'm just super proud of the atmosphere that I created in this level through the use of the mask. The bottom half of this block is 1 opacity. This is all a solid opacity. This is a different opacity than the block. This is a super bright opacity. The top part of this block is left blank too. You know, it's just super diverse in how it's made. in order to create that mix of light and dark with the glow as well, making the light areas super bright and very clear to see. The saturated arrows against the desaturated colors. Nice transition, idiot. Just jump. Another level that I tried my absolute hardest to set apart from the rest of the effect levels, using a big overlay at the top to bring in pulses instead of having to change the color of the mask itself. There's lots of set details that makes this level my own. Also, Hyper's help with the block design here, the immersion with the gradient blocks moving up and down, the effect that I kind of invented in the background with the pixels and the heart. That isn't actually set to specific IDs, it's all done by rows and columns. I just really like Yob because I think it just shows my creative ability to make atmosphere through the use of masks. Before I go into the last level I'm going to talk about in this video, I want to go into Lil Lights because this is another sort of episode of the really rushed level saga. I made this level in one day for Christmas, focused on the atmosphere yet again using glow and a blending filter above the level to make it super saturated in its color. Again, another level that strives for originality, because at the beginning I tried to make it flowing with the super smooth rotations and movements of these glowing blocks, and also the movements in these structures. Then as the song progresses, the background becomes more distorted, the blocks have jagged edges, they're in unconventional shapes. This is just another level that I made just to test the boundaries of what I could do with a very vibey song. Again, another Zulu / Xorberax song, same person. Now, the last level I'm going to talk about in this video is Superlunary. I'm going to save Come Back to Earth for one specific video, going into my deeper thoughts into the level, because this level has so much meaning into it that is often overlooked by the majority of players. Superlunary is another level that I put lots and lots of effort into. I wanted it to be an XL easy demon. Turned out as medium, but I think it's fine that way. Superlunary is another level that I made to test myself with a more clustered style in the beginning, in both the foreground and the background, with lots of different movements, pulses, saturations, everything is different. I wanted to try and create a bridge between a clustered style, yet keeping it elegant, which is, I think, demonstrated best in this ship section, with this effect that is, okay, well, this ship combines a very clustered effect in the background that is quite similar to the Not Serious one, to sort of nod to that kind of era I was going through and creating, with these little crosses instead of the arrows. Again, I'm using masking to bring in this atmosphere, with dark areas outside and light areas inside the blocks, which is all brought together by this glow to make it one nice, aesthetically pleasing piece, in my opinion. These are my most experimental colors and pulses, I think, although I think that this ruins the level because it doesn't have quite the same color range. The pulses on top of the gradient blocks kind of ruin the color range I was going for, and instead it makes it super bright and you can't really see the different hues inside those gradients, and then it makes these dark areas of the blocks look way too different, and it's all really imbalanced, but not the way I wanted it to be. I also don't think this is very elegant. I think this part is also aged very badly, like a couple of other levels that I haven't shown. This UFO is one of my favorite things I've ever built, although the gameplay kind of sucks here and it's a lot harder than the rest. This level also gives a nod to Yob in this reform effect. It's very similar to the heart effect that I made at the end when it all comes together from a bunch of particles, but instead I made it reform to say SL, which stands for Superlunary. And here's the other factor that ruins this level: the dedications at the end. Oh yeah. Nice. So, I hope this video was given a bit more insight to the bases that I didn't cover in my timeline video, which you can find in the card in the top right. It doesn't really go into details on how I made the levels, it's just details on how I sort of came up in the community. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's something a little bit different to my regular critique-y style with lots of reviews, but I'm planning to bring out a lot more thoughts on videos soon, featuring a lot of talented mods and reviewers that I want to shed light on, so stay tuned for that. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe, tell me in the comments what you think is my best level, and have a good day.